Welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of the podcast, Ghosts, Demons, and Murder, Oh My. My name is Hayden Crook, and I will be your host for today's episode on the Outlast video game franchise. So let me start by saying that Outlast and its DLC Whistleblower are in my top list of survival horror games that I've ever had the pleasure to play. I know some people might be like, it's not survival horror because you don't fight back. You just basically in this game, you have two options. You hide or you run, which to me is a survival horror, but to each their own. So I was terrified playing the entire time, but enjoyed every second of it. Uh, it was weird for me. I'm one of those people that likes being scared, like in theory, but then like when it actually happens, like I get really scared and I'm a big wimp. Or like I'm like, oh, that wasn't too bad. And then like when I go to lay down at night, I'm just like everything just kind of replays back in my mind and I'm like, oh gosh. But I enjoyed every second of it. And honestly, like the story and just everything, like I was so engrossed that I couldn't quit playing Outlast and Whistleblower until I found out what happened. I unlocked the horrific secrets behind the walls of the asylum. That's how good it was for me. My cousin talked me into it. I've had them on my list, the Outlast games, for years. I was like, I was always worried it would be too scared for me to finish, or I was like, I don't want to waste, money on a game I'm never gonna play, which, if you're a gamer, that happens. But a couple months ago they were on sale. It was like $3, I think. So I said, hell yeah, I'm gonna try it out. My cousin's like, do it, do it, do it. I want to know what you think about this, and we can talk about it after. So that's been fun. I'm gonna watch later on, eventually in my free time. I'm gonna watch like a 3-hour video, I think my cousin sent me, of like explaining the story, the folklore, the origins, everything of that. So the jump scares, the music, visuals, and atmosphere was unlike anything I have ever or I've experienced in a game in years. I couldn't even begin to compare it to another game or game franchise. That's how kind of unique it was in that sense. And don't get me started on the anxiety-inducing chase sections in the game where you have to use critical thinking skills to escape the entity stalking you, which, oh my gosh. It's fun, but I'm like, which way do I go? Or like I go the wrong way and I get hit or stabbed. I'm like, damn it, I'm gonna die. But oh, it was fun. Fun, fun, fun. Let me set the mood and dive into more of the story and the lore of these games. Armed with nothing but a camcorder with night vision, you must navigate the Mount Massive Asylum as you try and find a way to escape while uncovering horrific events along the way. You begin to learn that the asylum is a front for a horrific experiment involving the mind and hallucinations. Throughout the game, you encounter various entities who add to the story and history of the experiments. And I'm not really going to spoil the story, events, or anything like that. I'm more, I guess I'm more promoting the franchise and hoping that people like me who maybe were too scared, apprehensive, are hoping, or after listening to this, maybe they'll consider it and play it. So I'm not really gonna give away spoilers. I'm just gonna kind of hit certain points here and there and just kind of talk about the gameplay, the game style, that kind of stuff. One of the entities in the game that you encounter is the Wall Rider, and I would like to discuss that and go more into detail now that you have a basic understanding of the game itself. Let's see. Source one is the official Outlast wiki page. This is a document you can find in the game. I think I found it. I don't know. It's kind of hard to grab documents and look for documents when you're like scared shitless and you're like hear noises. So the document from the actual game says brief introduction to Wall Rider mythology for MRD support staff. The Murkoff Corp. Note, this is for support, notational purposes only. Engage in no direct contact with patients during or after therapy. The Wall Rider, also known as an Alp or Mara or Schrat, is a demonic creature of German origin that torments sleepers. They crouch on a sleeper's chest and crush the breath from him. The sleeper wakes terrified, paralyzed, and asphyxiating. The name Mara gives us the word nightmare. Sexual assaults by the demon are rare, but is known to drink milk from breasts of sleeping women and blood from the nipples of sleeping men. Isn't that great? Source 2 is a demonology fandom page from the fandom website. They have a bunch of different articles, entries that you can put. An Alp is a nightmare creature originating in German folklore, not to be mistaken with the similarly named Alp Luatra. Sorry, words are hard. The Alp is sometimes likened to a vampire, but its behavior is more akin to that of the incubus. It is unique from both of these creatures in that it wears a magic hat called a tarnkappe, from which it draws its powers. Hold on, side note. If you've seen Doctor Sleep or read Doctor Sleep by Stephen King, they're kind of like that, like vampire incubuses. So that's what that reminded me of. And that the main lady, the evil lady in it, she wears a hat. So I was like, that's interesting. That's probably where Stephen King got it from. Sorry for that side note on that thing. I just was like, oh, light bulb. So yeah, so it wears a magic hat that gives it power. The word Alp is a variation on the word elf. It is also known by the following names: Trud, Mar, Mart, Mar, Schrat, and Walrider. Many variations of the creature exist in surrounding European areas, such as the Druden and Shreteli, or Old Hag in English-speaking countries. The Alp is known for its shape-shifting abilities, similar to the creatures from werewolf lore. It may change into a cat, pig, dog, snake, or a small white butterfly. It has also been said that it can fly like a bird and ride a horse. The Alp always wears a hat, giving it an almost comical hoop. I don't know. I copied and pasted this article. The hat is known as a tarnkappe, the literal translation being camouflage cap or cap of concealment, which is simply a hat, or less commonly a veil, that gives the Alp magic powers and the ability to turn invisible while worn. The hat is visible no matter what shape the Alp takes. An Alp who has lost this hat will offer a great reward for its safe return. The Alp also possesses an evil eye whose gaze will inflict illness and misfortune. Removing or damaging this eye also removes the Alp's malicious intentions. Protections against an Alp include laying a broomstick under a pillow, iron horseshoes hung from the bedpost, placing shoes against the bed with the toes pointing toward the door, or placing a mirror on the chest. Steel and crosses are also used. If awoken by the Alp and finding him still there, one can address him by asking him to return in the morning to borrow something or have coffee. The Alp will dash away at once, arriving in the morning either in his true form or else in the form of a human with eyebrows that meet to receive his gifts. The creature can be convinced to leave the victim alone at this time, but the Alp will beg pitifully and at length not to be turned away. Plugging up any holes, specifically keyholes, before a visitation will keep the Alp out. Plugging them during a visitation will invariably seal it inside the room, as they can leave only through their original entrance. A light kept constantly on during the night will also effectively ward off an Alp. A sentry may also be employed to wait and watch for the Alp to attack the helpless sleeper. The Alp may be driven away if caught by someone not under the Alp's influence. Similar to the German Noontoter, Alps are weakened or immobilized by shoving a lemon in its mouth should it be caught resting during the day. The Alp appears all but impossible to kill, and sometimes even after being turned away, it may reappear years later in a worse mood. Then, the same article diving more into the origins. The Alps history originated in the mountainous regions of Germany and Austria. The Alps Tarnkappe, as well as its demeanor and abilities, suggest that the Dwarf King Alberich from the Teutonic epic poem Nibelungenlied Nibelungenlied is a source of inspiration for much of the Alps mythology. In Teutonic mythology and folklore, Alps were considered friendly elf-like beings which lived in the mountains, but eventually turned more negative and malevolent. The characteristic magic that the Alps possess also bear the creatures much resemblance to the kobold, particular Hodekin. The Alp in many cases is considered a demon, but there have been some instances in which the Alp is created from the spirits of recently dead relatives, more akin to a spirit or ghost. Children may become an Alp if a woman bites a horse collar to ease the pain during an extremely long and torturous childbirth. Also, a child born with a caul or hair on the palms may become an Alp. If a woman who is pregnant is frightened by an animal, the child may be born an Alp. Stillborn infants are also suspected to return from the grave as Alps and torment their family. People who have eyebrows that meet are suspected to be Alps. As with the case of werewolves, sometimes a normal human or animal may become an Alp during the night. They are typically unaware of their nocturnal activities and are invariably in disguise while doing so. Finding an Alp while it is not active simply requires injuring or otherwise marking it during one of its attacks, and seeking out the being with a similar mark during the day. The person can then be cured if it is found out who sent them the curse, or how they became cursed to begin with. Witchcraft is often the prime suspect in this case. Sometimes an Alp is a spirit summoned by a witch or an evil person, wishing harm on another and sent to torment them. Tricking an Alp may lead a person to its master. It may also have been expelled by the breath of a Horrorcy, a German demon which exhales vampiric butterflies. And then source 3 is the Monster Blog of Monsters, and there's something called Walrider syndrome. So I'm going to go into that a little bit, since we already learned the characteristics, origins, and stuff like that. The name for the way in which a Wix's magic may manifest is they sleep. Walrider syndrome is known to especially affect those already infected by Nachtmarie Babtit parasites or with unusual or wild magic, as can be found in those suffering from sufferling, sufferlingitis or who are obscurials or who have traumatic magic. Walrider syndrome causes an individual's magic to act out as they sleep. Depending on why exactly one is affected, one might eventually die from the crushing feeling the disease often causes, or one might simply have dangerously active magic as they sleep. Generally, Walrider syndrome manifests by one's magic reacting to one's dreams as they would in real life. If one feels threatened, the magic will lash out and attempt to protect. If one feels as though they are failing or falling, one's magic will levitate them. If one feels as though they are imprisoned or restrained and need space, their magic may well violently push away anyone nearby. Due to this, most individuals who suffer from Walrider syndrome end up sleeping alone. In addition to this, it is very common for an individual's magic to press down on their chest, believed by some magi psychologists and magical theorists to be their magic's attempt to physically ground them, which can eventually lead to death by suffocation. In cases where the syndrome is present due to trauma, as in obscurials and those with traumatic magic, treating the trauma can often ease the vehemence with which their magic manifests. Indeed, it has been noticed that in obscurials, whose accidental formations of an obscurus is a way of coping with what they have been taught of magic and their own magic, and is thus a copingism, albeit a dangerous one. Their magic reacts differently, often seeming to manifest their dream around them, conjuring illusions or otherwise emulating the environment of their dreams. Due to this, many with Walrider syndrome are advised to see magi psychologists and counselors, though it does not help in all cases, most notably those who also suffer from suffer sufferlingitis. Lingitis. At present, however, there are no other effective treatments yet developed. So that's basically it for Outlast 1. Um, the Walrider is a pretty it it isn't based off this research. I mean, it's based off of it, but it's more like a kind of like shadowy sleep paralysis demon. It will just pop up out of nowhere throughout the game in certain parts and like kind of like push you or like try and attack you and you have to run away from it. And you find out later on it is connected to the experiments and stuff like that. I knocked that bottle over. I'm not going to spoil anything about the wall rider, um, and that kind of stuff. I just kind of wanted to talk about it and mention it and go more in depth. So if you do decide to play this, or if you've already played it, you kind of have a better understanding of what they were going off of when they created this entity in the game. So Outlast 1 and the DLC Whistleblower were great. No complaints there. I'm going to briefly talk about Outlast 2 because honestly, there's nothing to really write home about except for the sections that include the Catholic school nightmare flashback sequences. Those sequences terrified me so much that on multiple occasions I had to complete them with the volume turned down. Yeah, it was that like terrifying for me that uh I just I couldn't have the volume on because I was just terrified. Um on one part, I guess I'll spoil a jump scare. I mean, there's like I think six different times you go back to these flashbacks, but on one of the times your camera runs out of batteries and you're like, oh, no big deal. Like, I'll just put another battery in and head out the exit because you're walking and the exits get blocked. So you got to like go back and forth. You're like running back and forth between this hallway. And when you put the batteries back in and the light comes back on your camera, the the Catholic school nightmare demon jumps up in your face, and that part scared the shit out of me. I screamed. I was playing on the couch. I slid down into the couch. It was a doozy. And I mean, that one was creepy, but like every flashback sequence with the Catholic school demon nightmare, it's just horrific. And that was like the best part. Sorry, my voice. That was like the best part of Outlast 2. Like the main storyline was like, all right, basically your helicopter crashes, you're a reporter with your wife, and there's like these cultists and these like doomsday groups, like these different groups fighting over her because they think she's gonna fulfill a prophecy, so you have to get her back. It was an all right story. I was more intrigued with the Catholic school nightmare flashbacks from your childhood. That's what kind of kept me going. I kept wanting to know like what happened, like what was the symbolism, what was everything behind it, like what why was it so vital to the story? And that's how the game starts out, which definitely sets the mood for it. But yeah, Outlast 2 compared to Outlast 1 was all right. Um I they recently released an Outlast Trials game. I'm not sure if there's like an actual story or anything. I'm visiting my family for the weekend. I'm hoping to play that with my aunt when I go over there and visit. If I can handle it, I heard it's pretty pretty intense too. I mean, Outlast 2 is intense too. There's so much gore and it's yeah, the games are not like for the faint of heart. There's a lot of blood and gore and just crazy stuff, especially in Whistleblower. There's one entity, one character that's like obsessed with you and you got to run away from him because he's a pervert and a weirdo. I'm not going to spoil it because I was like, what the hell is going on? But yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. And that's why I'm saying it's different from anything I've ever played because it's just very unique and I don't know. I just think it's a great series. Even number two, like number two is not great because they raised the bar so high and so good with the first one. Number two is just kind of meh compared to the first one. Um, I feel like Outlast 2 relied more on jump scares too, like kind of like lazy writing, I guess, like development. Outlast 1, like, yeah, there was a couple jump scares, but not a lot. It was mostly the atmosphere and stuff. And in Outlast 2, you have a microphone on your camera, so you can like hear the enemies like in the area and like different stuff. So it was different. I mean, they tried, and I mean, I still recommend playing it, but just for the Catholic school nightmare parts. Um, let's see. I'm gonna leave it at that because I don't want to spoil the experience for others. Um, I highly recommend the Outlast video game series to those who are looking for an unforgettable and disturbing survival horror experience. I'm hoping for a third game in the franchise. Hopefully that happens. And like I said, I'm going to be checking out Outlast Trials hopefully this weekend. Hopefully I can handle it. Knowing my family, they're going to say, we can't play until night because it will add to the ambiance, which it's whatever. But yeah. So check out the Outlast game series, honestly. Do yourself a favor. Um, Play the DLC, the Whistleblower, for the first one. It's worth the money. It's worth the investment. The games are short. I completed them in a couple hours, 4 to 6 hours, I would say. Um, if you're like a completionist and you like to explore and look around, it might take you a little bit more. Like if you want to get all the files, all the trophies, whatever, that kind of stuff might take you a little bit more, but about 4 to 6 hours for me. Some parts I just rushed through because I was terrified. I was like, nope, I'm just gonna run straight down the hallway towards the light and get the hell out of this area. But great franchise, great game series. I highly recommend it. If you've already played them, let me know what you think. Pros, cons, that kind of stuff. I'm gonna stop here. I'm just rambling at this point. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Ghosts, Demons, and Murder. Oh my. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can get all the updates, information, and content that will be uploaded. Thank you for the support and listening to the podcast. And always, I can be reached via email at haydencrook8@gmail.com. Thank you.